Officials say the attacks were launched after Tehran violated the ceasefire by targeting a cargo ship in the Strait with attack drones. But Iran denies that account, accusing Washington of breaking the truce first, as both sides tell very different stories about what happened. Here with us now, Vice President for Policy at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, Blaise Misztal. Thanks for being here, Blaise. You know, all of this is happening with an MOU now in place and new peace talks happening and beginning. But it's different now, given that we're seeing that same back and forth strikes we saw before the agreement. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's good to be with you. What I think we're seeing is the result of two things stemming from that MOU that you mentioned, that deal that President Trump signed with the Iranians. One is the lesson that Iran took from the deal, which was that they won, that their control of the Strait of Hormuz, their choking of energy supplies to the world and driving up of global energy prices was in fact, a trump card that gave them all the leverage that forced President Trump to the table and to sign the deal. So they assume that they have the upper hand right now. And then secondly, I think that there's a misunderstanding or different understandings between the two sides, between Washington and Tehran, about what the deal actually says and what it does. President Trump, I think, believes that the deal is about going back to the way things were in the Strait of Hormuz, to restoring freedom of navigation, to letting ships pass freely with no one controlling where ships go or charging them tolls. Iran, on the other hand, sees that the MOU says that there's no tolling for 60 days. After that, that control of the strait is going to be dictated by Iran in coordination with Oman. And they think the MOU gives them control. And so when ships try to go past without control, coordinating with Iran, without Iranian agreement, they see that as breaking the MOU because they think they now own and control the strait.
Well, and also Trump now says Iran still has some ability to attack after previously claiming its Navy had been obliterated. We remember that. Let's listen.
We had to take that detour to knock out Iran. If we didn't do that, and we're still, we still have a fight. They have some capability, not much. They're not winning or anything, but they have some capability. They can still shoot.
Okay, so why do you think we're hearing a different tone now? And how would you assess Iran's military capabilities? I mean, obviously, they still have something going on here.
Yeah, they certainly do. And I think it's important to understand that even though we're talking about their control of the Strait of Hormuz, a waterway, it's primarily not a naval threat that they have. It's an aerial threat. It's their drones and missiles with which they're able to target ships that they're passing close to their shores. That is the problem. Yes, there are mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, those need to be removed at some point. But it's really those drones that are giving ships pause and causing them to turn around right now. And it's very clear that even though the U.S., together with Israel, took out a large number of Iranian drones and missiles, they still have enough to pose a threat.
You know, the White House is trying to move forward with both the U.S.-Iran ceasefire and a new Israel-Lebanon peace framework, right? But Israel is saying it will, quote, finish the job if it's attacked again by Iran, if fighting breaks out again between Israel and Iran or Hezbollah. What do you think that means for the U.S.-Iran deal? I mean, things looks like they're going to continue to move forward, but then you've got kind of this, wrinkle in the cloth.
Yeah, well, I think it's important, as you just said, that it's a U.S.-Iran deal. Israel was not at the table. It was not party to the negotiations, and it signed the deal. And so it does not feel that it is bound by that deal if and when its national security is endangered by Iran. But I think more telling is that Lebanon has now also implicitly rejected that MOU. Remember that the MOU tries to tie Lebanon into the deal, sort of gives Iran a say about what happens in Lebanon, tries to save Hezbollah, the Iranian terrorist group there. And we saw a separate peace deal between Israel and Lebanon signed just yesterday, in which both of them say, no, we don't want Hezbollah here. No, we don't want Iran deciding what happens in Lebanon. We're going to work together to get rid of these threats. And I think that's the most powerful rebuke that we've seen yet of the MOU, this Israel and Lebanon working together to try to push Iran out.
Yeah, and a senior Iranian military advisor is warning that if Iran is ready to hit back, if it's attacked again by the U.S. or Israel. Let's listen to that.
I will say it clearly right here. If the slightest threat against Iran is made, whether from American forces or Israeli forces, what I want to say is a fourth war will not be like the third.
You know, we've been talking about this breaking news all morning. We already saw Iran take aim at U.S. ally Bahrain this morning. So what will you be watching over the next few weeks to see if the ceasefire is really holding? There's a lot of moving parts. What are you honing in on?
Yeah, I think all of the fronts that we've discussed, certainly what is happening in the Strait, does this tit for tat continue? Does it lead to escalation of the Iranians sort of hitting more serious targets in and around the Gulf? But also on the more hopeful side, watching what happens with Lebanon after this framework agreement. Do we see greater cooperation between the Lebanese and Israeli forces in being able to disarm Hezbollah, remove its terrorist infrastructure from some of the regions that they've agreed to work on together? I think that is going to be sort of the most powerful signal that we see that Iranian influence is actually being weakened in the region.
And also this, lastly, Secretary Pete Hegseth has removed a well-respected military officer, General Chris Donahue, as well as several other top military leaders since taking over the Pentagon last year with little public explanation. A lot of people still have questions about this. And now lawmakers want the Pentagon to explain those decisions within 5 days. What's your reaction to Donahue's ousting, and what should happen if the Pentagon refuses to explain?
Look, I think there's two things that are true at the same time. One is that this is something that is within the legal authorities of the Secretary of Defense to do. On the other hand, certainly I think the American people and Congress deserve an explanation why, in particular, this general who has, I think, received nothing but the highest praise from everyone who has served with him, why he is being removed. I think an explanation is definitely warranted.
Okay, let's see how it goes together. Vice President for the Policy at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, Blaise Misztal. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the Department of Homeland Security cracking down on cartels in Texas. Gangs are controlling the border with so-called plazas that are allowing drug and human smuggling to run